In this video, we'll be reviewing a worksheet. This is an accounting tool that is often used in practice. This is not something you will be tested on. It's purely informational for your needs only. So it actually is going to come from exercise 220 in your textbook. But again, it is just informational purposes in case you decide you want to use one yourself sometime. So what you see here, this is a follow-up from our fundamental review session, and we have the unadjusted trial balance listed over on the left-hand side in the first two columns. You'll see here. Let me get up here and do a little highlighting so you know what I'm talking about. So this is your unadjusted trial balance. You'll see DR for debit, CR for credit, and then all of your accounts are listed over on this side. Every account that the company has listed on this side. The current balances for the unadjusted trial balance are listed here. Notice at the bottom we have the totals, and of course the totals must be in balance. Otherwise we've got a problem and we've got to go back into the books and try to figure out what's wrong, what's caused this problem, and get it repaired. Okay, so that's where we are in balance at the bottom. Then throughout the period, one of the steps that we'll need to take is to apply the adjusting entries at the end of the period. And so you'll see some in the center column here. So we have debit, credit here as well. So it looks like I had to remove the numbers so that my formulas would work. But we have the accumulated depreciation. That means there should be something over on the debit side that matches up, and there is. So depreciation expense, notice right here, depreciation expense was debited for $10,000. Accumulated depreciation took the credit side of that entry for $10,000. And then we had another one, wages expense here for $4,000 was debited. The wages payable took the credit side of the entry. So this is very simple. Most businesses you would see quite a few more adjusting entries, but this will do for our purposes. Notice these columns are also tallied up. And notice the formula up here in your bar. I've highlighted up at the top or selected it. It's not really, it's kind of dark, so it's not what I call highlighted. So this is a formula that you can put into place and have Excel to sum this for you, each of your columns. Same thing here. So I'm telling it to sum what's in the column. You might take it all the way up to, notice here we're in column E, and then your numbers here to the left tell you which row you're on. So you could take it actually all the way up to the top, which we will do here in just a moment. Let's see about this one. Okay, so this one is completely summed. If I double click, it'll show me all of the items that are included in that calculation. Same thing here. So the entire column is included for both of those. And are they in balance? Yes, they are. So this is excellent news. But let's notice what happened for the adjusting entries. So here we had, I'll do a little highlighting there too. So we had $30,000 credit balance, which is what we expect to see with your accumulated depreciation. This is a contra asset account, so this is the balance we expect to see. Then for the adjusting entry, we recognized $10,000 in expense, so the credit side of that was to journalize $10,000 to accumulated depreciation. So now for the adjusted balance, both of those are credits. So we can actually just do the math here. And so the formula that I actually put in includes a mistake, it looks like. So that, yeah, E8 should not be a part of it. I think what I meant to do was say D8. Just in case there should be a time when you might need to do some sort of a negative, do a subtraction to this account, the formula is in there so that if I did, made a mistake, let's just pretend that this happened. Let's say $500, and see it automatically takes that into account over here. So that's not what happened, so let me take that back out. But if you use those formulas, again looking up here in the bar, You'll put the equal sign and then whatever formula you're going to use. And Excel actually has a formula bar, so when you start typing, sometimes it'll recognize what you're going to do, but sometimes you might need to select something different, a different formula to go in there if you're using well, just a number of statistics and various items. The system will recognize it. Okay, that's right now. Okay, I'm back. The pen actually got hung up on me, so it wasn't working as well as it should. Okay, so you see the formula up in the formula bar. Just mark it here. No, maybe not. There we go. So the totals carry forward. The other item that had an adjusting entry here was our salaries payable. So notice your formula here as well up at the top, and you'll see, of course, it started with a zero balance. Over in the C column here, there was a payable debt, a credit to that account of $4,000. So here, when you see the formula bar at the top, you'll see that these two items were added together as they should be, and they're both following along with the credit balance here, so that says it should be also. Okay, retained earnings, I just carried that straight over. You can see the formulas. I pulled them straight out of the unadjusted trial balance. Unless there was an adjusting entry, I just brought them straight over. This one did have an adjusting entry, so you see in the formula bar here again at the top how that worked out, and when you click on it, it'll show you which cells are included. And let's see, that's the only... Here was the salaries expense, so there was $71,000 in salary expense. $4,000 additional dollars in salary expense has been recorded for the adjusting entry, so those two added together to give us our total of $75,000 now for the salaries expense. Okay, and then I made sure everything was in balance at the bottom, so now I'm actually ready to move into my financial statements. So the first one's going to be the income statement. I'll bring right over the revenue, which comes, now I'm pulling from the adjusted trial balance. And so I'll pull up that revenue. Remember, everything that needed to be adjusted was adjusted, and then the third set of columns, column F and G, hold those new balances. And so that's what we'll see here. So still pulling from that adjusted trial balance, just kind of walking down. See the same thing, they're all selecting from there. And you have to tell Excel to do that. It's a very smart tool, and you can select a whole series once you get a little practice at it and you feel pretty confident. Okay, so I calculated the totals here. I'm obviously out of balance here. If I were in balance, that would mean I had no profit nor loss. So there is some profit here, and that's the difference that we see. The amount, I moved over here to the, you see the highlighted area over on the left. So I brought in the revenues that you see there at the bottom, and I brought in the total of the expenses right there. And when I did that subtraction, I told the system to subtract it. And when we subtracted it, then there is a positive balance of $12,000. Well, you see this up in your formula bar. So the $12,000, when we tack it on down here, now we are fully in balance, okay? And I'll say another word about that $12,000 in a moment. Then the next statement we're going to look at is the balance sheet. Most of the time you don't see the statement of retained earnings show up on these worksheets. You could set it up yourself using this sheet so that it did incorporate it if you wanted to. But again, the manual worksheets just usually don't have them on there, have it on there. So that calculation is usually kind of made over on the side. For the balance sheet, now notice when we looked here at the income statement, we pulled all of the items that came from this same portion of the adjusted trial balance. All of those items moved over to the income statement. For the income statement, there are no assets, no revenues, and no equity. Now all of the items above that, which is assets all the way down to retained earnings, they are going to show up over on the balance sheet. And notice that's a perfect matching up here. So all of the assets, the liabilities, and the equity accounts, all of those permanent accounts are showing up here now on the balance sheet. Your income statement houses all your, not all, but it houses the temporary accounts with the exception of dividends. So all of these items are here. Now, I don't really see any dividends for this particular problem. We've run the total, doing the same thing, including the formula for each side. And just clicking on it to show you that all of those cells are in there. I encourage you to play around with Excel as much as you can. More is better. More knowledge is just better and more beneficial to you. The more that you can do with it in the workplace, the better off you'll be. Make you even more valuable to your employer. Okay, so remember, we always have to have a debit that matches the credit. And so that actually falls true here when we're trying to match up for and place this net income. So we put a debit over on the income statement side. That caused us to be in balance down here. And so that was a debit. And so for the balance sheet, because we're not working the statement of retained earnings on this worksheet, then you actually see that there is a credit into the balance sheet. When that credit for the same amount is put into place, now our balance sheet is perfectly balanced. Isn't that wonderful? The people had a great idea that put this accounting stuff into place back in the 1400s. Okay, so that is your spreadsheet using Excel. Again, there's tremendous opportunities out there, so many things you can do to make this more applicable. You can make this worksheet work for you using the manual analysis pads and sheets that you can get at any office supply store or even Walmart and places like that many times. But the more you can use Excel and become more experienced and practice with it, the better off you'll be. Down at the bottom, I've got this just labeled sheet 1. I could rename it if I wanted to. Let's just call it exercise. Okay, so we're going to rename this exercise 20. So if I had multiple sheets, I'll just click here on another one and it gives me another sheet. And I can go back and forth between the two. So back to my original, if I wanted to do some more work here. When you do your comprehensive project, you will link between sheets like this, and when you move on into intermediate 2, you'll have an even more advanced project that will in which you will have to link using Excel. So we're going to be requiring it in the class that you become pretty comfortable with it to do projects for us. So again, utilize it anytime you can in your personal life, in your work life. It will make things much better for you. Play around with it. This is the auto sum button that would help you to do some summing if you needed to, which I don't need to right now for that particular one, but let's just do that. So here, and notice these have zeroed out because I took that 12,000 out. They went to 0. So I'm also out of balance here in the 2. Same thing here. Whoops, sorry, I picked the wrong one. Between these, out of balance now. Oh goodness, sorry. Touchy pad here. Okay, back now. So what I wanted to show you is there we go. So if I just tell it to sum right there on those items, it's just going to add them up, you see. But what I need it to do, let me go back in the formula bar here, and instead of summing, I need a subtraction here. So I just kind of edit it a bit, and see how the 12,000 popped in, and it's come over properly to the net income areas for the income statement and the balance sheet, so everything is back in balance. So lots that you can do with Excel, so just get out there and have some fun with it, and practice so that you'll be ready when you get to your comprehensive projects. Then you'll be brushed up and ready to go. So I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, be sure and ask your professor.